Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I want to thank everybody so very much. The last 3 videos have really just changed my little YouTube world because I've had so many views, I've had so many subscribers, I've had so many comments. It has just been a delight, and every morning I wake up and I go, oh, who messaged me today? So I want to thank all of you who've subscribed and all of you who've watched and all of you who've said not for me but still have watched, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so very much. And I'm not sure that I'm going to really change anything about the way I do things because perhaps what I'm doing is working. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to send me a comment and I will reply. Okay, today I said I was going to talk about coffee table books, and I don't really know what the aesthetic is for people who decorate today, but when my parents were first getting themselves together aesthetically, one of the things that was definitely de rigueur was to have a coffee table, and upon that coffee table one must have at least one coffee table book, and usually fairly big, usually on a subject that is just a little tantalizing. Maybe like you would want to have something that showed sort of who you were, an adventure type book, National Geographic type book, those sorts of things. So your coffee table book said a lot about who you were. Steve and I have never really had an opportunity for a coffee table book. It's more like there's a coffee table buried underneath the books and some of the coffee, and yeah, it's just the few times that I have tried to put a book out as an object to admire, it is quickly being covered up by not only other books but also the cats. I think coffee table books are the perfect size for cats, and they just love to sit on it and squish their tails around. So I'm bringing to you about 5 or 6 books that I really have enjoyed. They are books that have influenced my art practice, which I don't share here, but that have been given to me mostly as gifts. I don't know, maybe I might have bought a couple of these, but in the beginning of my world of collecting these kinds of books, they were quite often gifts because they were pretty expensive. Okay, this one is called All About Color by Janice Lindsay. It's a hardcover. And what she has done is taken, she's a colorist herself, and she's done a lot of work with, well, I'm not going to tell you what she did because I don't remember the important point. Oh, she's Canadian, I see here. Yay, Canada. She has taken different kinds of, I'm just going to take the book jacket off. Do you do that? I find the book jacket is always vulnerable to being damaged. So she has themes, and she will talk about the colors that were prominent in those themes. This is the 19th century and the exposition in Paris and how color played a role in that. Then she also will take a particular color, for instance, let me see. I think this chapter is definitely talking about yellow. And she's also put it in context of art history. So I just saw a picture here. Where did it go? It's gone. Anyhow, so what she's done is she's talked about color from an economic point of view, a historical point of view, interesting facts. So for instance, for a long time, black was not seen as black, but blue and green were seen as black. And I think at certain points, oh, there's the art piece I was looking for. At certain points, color wasn't really seen as the absence of light or the presence of light, but more dark and light relative to each other. There's the history of purple. There's the discussion on what precious elements were included. So the color purple, I think that's the one with the bug that was hard to get. Indigo from Japan was really difficult for a long time, although woad was an option, but quite a bit of different variations where I think indigo is a bit more reliable as a dye source. Also a discussion on the difference between natural dyes and synthetic dyes. There's just so much that's good here. Some of it's discussing what people think they're saying about themselves with color. Orange and reds and bright yellows are supposed to say one thing about your personality, and which I find a little bit surprising because a couple of the most quiet people in my world adore red and orange. So I'm not sure how much that holds true. Anyways, it's a really interesting book. I think that it takes, every different chapter has got a different slant on color and the uses in society over, and also quite a bit over history, but also what's happening today. I think I got this book about 15 years ago, and it really lightened my load as far as worrying about color. You know, there's all these color theorists around, and you've got to be a good colorist to know what your art is and so on. And well, by the time I was finished, I realized just go for what you like. If you like something particularly, and it tends to be something that repeats in your mind, like I really want to do that blue and green combo again, then as an artist, do that blue and green combo again and try throwing some yellow this time or what have you. Anyhow, I really enjoyed that book, and it really did make a difference in my studio practice. This one is also a Canadian book. It is Emily Carr, Sister and I in Alaska, and it is written by Emily Carr. And she did this a long time ago. This is a reproduction from her diaries of a journey that she and her sister took to Alaska in 1907. And so she's telling it both in primarily in graphics. I'll pull that back a bit. I hope you can see that. So there were hazardous precipices to be scaled, which rendered poor sister faint and giddy. But the strong hand of La Totem is ever ready to assist her, while I crawl up like a bug. They're quite humorous. Both of them are definitely in their middle ages when they are traveling, and they're not always enjoying themselves. They're quite honest. Hi, Taz. They're quite honest about how they feel on their journeys when the hotel room is substandard or the food is substandard, or she's always got very good expressions on her face. It's very, as the book says at the back says, it's very whimsical. It's full color, and let's see, 47 pages of watercolors, fresh and bright, with that flew by. That was Missy. And let me see. I think there is also a very interesting introduction, which I may have read. I'm not terrifically good at reading introductions. I might read them after I've read a book, just because I want to just enjoy the book and read it on my own terms. Okay, so very interesting, lovely. If you like Emily Carr, this for sure opens up a slightly different view on her life, because I think she was known as a bit of a grumposaurus, especially towards the end of her life, and I think we don't realize just what a comic comedian she could be. This one I definitely bought for myself. Hortus Mirabilis, Oldest Botanical Garden, which is in Padua, Italy. So the book comes with this nice little doodad, frippery. One of my first pieces that went on exhibition was a study of well, it's not a floor plan, but the layout of the garden at Padua. And this garden started out in the 1500s, and it was a collection of the plants known at that time that were used as medicinal supporters of the doctors, as the doctors were at those times. Plants in those days were sometimes, if it had a bit of a heart shape, it would be determined that would be a plant that would be used for heart ailments. So there wasn't a ton of scientific observation as we know it. There's quite a lot of speculation and quite a lot of imagination, and what they would do is plant the gardens up in such a way that the students and the professors would walk through the gardens, and the lectures would be given in the gardens themselves, and then you would end up with these families of plants grouped together that had to do with perhaps kidney ailments and so forth. I'm sure if you watched anything that has to do with early medicine, or if Queen Elizabeth the First or any of that sort of thing, you know, you end up with peppermint mixed with bat wings. It really wasn't much different than potions that are ascribed to witches. You know, when you watch what the medical people, the so-called professionals, were doing and what the so-called witches were doing, there wasn't a lot of difference between the stabs in the dark that they were making towards healing people. But so this is the beginning of medical education, and it's the beginning of scientific observation. It's the beginning of grouping plants. They had many different systems for grouping plants, and it wasn't until Linnaeus came around. I can't remember when he came around, and he was the fellow who finally came up with a system of cataloging plants that made sense botanically. But so it's a really interesting dive into this garden that has been around for several hundred years, and it continues to thrive. That's probably a poor picture for you, but that is one of the newer classrooms. There are beautiful, beautiful photographs. And there are some little discussions about the different directors and the directions that during different eras. There was also some connections with famous explorers who would go to different countries, Brazil or China, and bring back specimens. It's a very broad overview of this particular garden. And this is where we started to get the botanical prints, as we know them, that from the 16 and 1700s. So there's some discussion of botanical artistry and the artists, and what were the essential things that needed to be part of a botanical print. So the seed and its different stages of growth, and its fruit, if there was any fruit, and what it looked like in death, and the different seasons. So it's really quite an interesting botanical book, as well as a look at this particular garden. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is this New Scientist magazine that there's the clock. I think that's 2 o'clock. Yes. Okay. New Scientist magazine is something I came across this summer, and it's put out every 2 months, and they've got some pretty interesting topics where they take the reader through kind of early, what would you say? They assume that you don't know what you're reading. So the first chapter or two sort of bring you into the topic. So the one on evolution is explaining Darwin and his theories, and an overview of what was happening at the time, and then they move on to what's happening in contemporary times. So you do need to read the whole magazine in order to get to your final chapter, because if this one's beyond the selfish gene. So before you get to this chapter, there's been an introduction on genetics, and where we get them from, and what is a species, and what does it take for species survival. So they're really nice journeys through the different topics. So that was evolution that I picked up in the summer. So the last book I'm going to show you is kind of my favorite of this group. It is the Kimono, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Kimono Meisen. It is the Karun Thakar collection. It gives a very nice introduction to what the kimono is all about, how it's made, and how there are other garments made in Japan that are similar to the kimono, but they would be slightly different in their construction forms, because they would be used for working, or so you go out into the farm fields or what have you, or for everydayness. So you would maybe get different proportions, and the belting would happen a little bit differently, and the looms would be set up a little bit differently too. So this also takes you through interesting things like the natural dyes and the synthetic dyes, and the aesthetic choices that were made with respect to kimonos, and what contemporary kimonos look like. In terms of the garment shape itself has not changed, and well, I mean, it's just a brilliant design. Why would you bother changing it? But so this one, you'd think that would be a fairly modern one, but it is actually not. So also how the loom is threaded. So what we have in that one that I just showed you is that quite probably the plain color was just put on the loom itself, and then the pattern was painted onto the threads, and then it was woven. And sorry, I'm looking for something that maybe has, that is not painted. So you get things where it's in the weaving structure itself, where you're starting to get your patterns, where certain threads are picked up and other threads are left behind, and small shots of color are introduced just within that one spot. So we've got designers that are going back to the beginning of kimono times, and we've got some modern designers who are also working with it. I'm pretty sure somewhere out in the world there's a documentary on kimonos, and these things are considered to be true works of art. The real craftsperson who pulls these together are, you know, national treasures at this point, because it's not something that is very there are still a lot of kimonos being worn, but they are more man-made as opposed to, I'm sorry, not man-made, machine manufactured, as opposed to made by a human hands pushing the shuttle back and forth. And yeah, so the people who made those kinds of weavings and designs and so forth are becoming less and less around, dying off, as it were. And the patterning is astonishing, and this is not the sort of kimono that you would see where there's a couple of swans going past and a couple of geisha with umbrellas and so on. These are quite extraordinary, out of the ordinary. Isn't that what those two words mean together? Yeah. So I love this book, and whenever you want to just, you know, open a book and not see anything really confrontational, pick up a book of beautiful cloth. Pick up a book with beautiful designs in it, and you can just sit back and, oh yeah. And I play games. I don't know if you play games with oh, I would wear that one. No, I wouldn't wear that one. That would, no, not today. So today I would probably choose that one. And if I was doing this video on another day, I'd choose another one. So that's it for me today. I believe that I'm going to be talking about Nonfiction November next week. And sooner or later, I'll be bringing to you Books That Don't Crush Your Soul, Part 2. And I hope that all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.